Miss Olivia, I can wipe this spot, the blond boy Caleb said, his voice trembling with effort. It's all right, Caleb. You've helped enough for today. Go rest on the sofa. Let Miss Olivia finish up, Olivia gently replied. But I want to help. You always say we're a team, Caleb insisted, trying to balance, his blue eyes sparkling with determination. Julian Sterling leaned back against the cold oak door, closing his eyes. From the other side, Caleb's giggles echoed, clear and innocent, a sound he should have been the one to create. He loosened his tie, his heavy footsteps resonating on the marble floor. His shoes echoed in the vast silence of the Sterling estate, a chilling contrast to the warmth emanating from the living room. He walked straight into his study, an orderly, minimalist, and emotionally barren space, just like its owner. On the gleaming ebony desk, beside a computer screen displaying soulless charts, was a silver photo frame. In the picture, Eleanor, his late wife, was beaming brightly, holding their newborn son tightly. Julian's trembling finger traced the cold glass. He whispered to the smiling face in the photo, a question no one could answer. Eleanor, where did I go wrong? Just then, his phone on the desk vibrated, shattering the moment. By habit, he answered the call. Sterling. Julian's voice instantly reverted to its usual cold, mechanical tone. Rachel's professional voice came through the small speaker. Mr. Sterling, I just wanted to confirm tomorrow's schedule. At 8 a.m., you have a board meeting. 11 a.m., a meeting with Japanese partners, and a working lunch with. Cancel everything, Julian interrupted, his voice deep and decisive, a command that brooked no argument. The other end of the line fell silent for a moment. Rachel, who had worked with him for 5 years, was undoubtedly stunned. Sir? Cancel? Everything? She hesitantly asked. Is there an emergency? Julian glanced towards the slightly ajar study door. Caleb's voice, telling Olivia about some superhero, echoed, faint but full of life. Yes, everything, he affirmed. Just tell them I have an urgent family matter. From now until tomorrow morning, don't connect any calls to me. Understood, Mr. Sterling. He hung up. The dry beep sounded, returning silence to the room. Julian no longer looked at the numbers on the screen. He swiveled his chair, turning his gaze towards the door, towards the living room, where the warm light and his son's laughter spread. For the first time in 3 years, Family Matters was not an excuse. It was the truth. The next day, Julian didn't go to the office. He said nothing, simply present. His silence permeated the entire mansion, creating an invisible awkwardness. Olivia was a little flustered seeing her boss home on a Tuesday morning, but she quickly regained her professional composure and continued her work. Caleb was curious. He kept glancing towards his father's study, where the door was just ajar. Julian sat inside, pretending to read documents, but his eyes never left them through the crack in the door. The warm drama began. Olivia brought out a large basket of dried laundry and placed it on the large rug in the living room. Come on, warrior Caleb, Olivia said cheerfully. Today we have a new mission, to build the world's tallest towel tower. Caleb moved closer on his crutches, his eyes sparkling with excitement. He sat down on the rug, and Olivia skillfully placed the basket within his reach. She didn't show pity or excessive help. Instead, she turned mundane chores into a game. I folded a towel, Caleb exclaimed, holding out his first brick, though it was still a bit wrinkled. Excellent. A perfect brick for the foundation, Olivia praised, taking the towel and placing it on the floor. Now it's my turn. They took turns. Julian watched his son, the child he always thought of as weak and needing protection, concentrating intently on folding the towels. His tiny fingers were clumsy but full of determination. Each time he finished one, He looked at Olivia with eyes expecting approval, and she never disappointed him. "Wow, you're folding straighter than I am," Olivia marveled. The towel tower gradually grew taller. With each towel placed, Caleb's joyous laughter rang out. Julian realized he hadn't heard his son laugh like that in a very, very long time. He only knew to buy him expensive robot toys, complex puzzles, but it never occurred to him that his son's joy could come from something as simple as folding a stack of towels. After the first mission, Olivia pointed to some potted plants near the window. "Teammate, it seems our green friends are thirsty. Would you like to join the plant rescue operation?" Caleb nodded vigorously. Olivia handed him a small plastic watering can, a toy one, containing only a little water so it wasn't too heavy. This was the real challenge. Julian watched with bated breath. To move, Caleb had to use both hands to hold onto his crutches. Carrying the watering can was impossible, but the boy didn't give up. He placed the can on the floor, took a small step with his crutches, then bent down, picked up the can, and placed it forward. Little by little, he shuffled towards the potted plant. Each step Caleb took was slow and shaky. For a moment, he almost lost his balance. Julian's heart constricted. He almost rushed out of his study. But Olivia just stood a distance away, arms crossed, her gaze not one of worry, but of absolute trust. "Take your time, warrior. You can do it." Her voice was calm and encouraging. Encouraged, Caleb took a deep breath, gripped his crutches firmly, and stood steady again. Finally, he reached the plant. He carefully tilted the can, letting a small stream of water nourish the roots. A drop of water glistened on a verdant leaf under the morning sunday. Mission accomplished, Caleb turned to look at Olivia, his face streaked with sweat but radiating an undeniable pride. "I did it, Miss Olivia." Olivia knelt on one knee, meeting his gaze. She didn't clap, didn't cheer loudly. She just looked directly into Caleb's eyes, her gentle hand wiping the sweat from his forehead. "See? I told you," she said softly, just loud enough for the two of them to hear. "Warrior Caleb can do anything." Caleb smiled, a bright, genuine smile. He unexpectedly leaned forward, wrapped his small arms around Olivia's neck, and hugged her tightly. In the following days, Julian turned himself into a ghost in his own home. He didn't go to the office, just sat in his study, the door slightly ajar, silently observing a world he should have been at the center of. Each day was a punch to his apathy. He watched Olivia turn mundane chores into adventures. They didn't put on socks. They put on armor for their toe soldiers. They didn't need dough. They discovered new, unknown dinosaur species. Olivia never criticized Caleb's distorted shapes. Instead, she would pick up a flattened piece of dough and marvel, "Wow, a masterpiece. What should we name it? Explorer Caleb." When she read stories, the entire living room transformed into a stage. She growled like a dragon, chirped like a bird, and Julian, sitting in his silence, heard his son cheer, "Careful Knight." He bitterly realized he didn't even know the name of his son's favorite storybook. The climax came during physical therapy. Before, he only received reports via email. Today, he witnessed it firsthand. When Caleb stumbled, lost his balance, and flopped onto the soft mat, Julian's first instinct was to rush out. But Olivia was faster. She didn't rush to help him up. She just knelt, looking directly into Caleb's teary eyes. "Get up, warrior." Her voice was calm and steady. "Falling is just the ground's way of reminding us that we're trying." And Caleb, instead of crying, took a deep breath, gripped his crutches firmly, and stood up by himself. Sweat trickled down his forehead, but his eyes blazed with determination. That night, passing his son's room, Julian paused at the door. He saw Olivia tucking the sleeping Caleb back in, then gently placing a kiss on his forehead. "Sleep tight, my warrior." That act decided everything. A wave of shame washed over him, clear and heavy. He could no longer continue to be a mere spectator in his own son's life. That morning, Julian woke up even before dawn. He wasn't wearing a suit, just a simple gray t-shirt and dress pants. Instead of turning into his study, he went straight to the kitchen. The modern kitchen was gleaming and unfamiliar. He looked around, feeling as out of place as if he were on someone else's territory. He opened the refrigerator, staring at the perfectly arranged ingredients. He decided to make pancakes, the only dish Eleanor had ever taught him, though he had forgotten almost everything. Olivia came downstairs, preparing for a typical workday, and froze when she saw her boss standing in the middle of the kitchen, holding a box of flour, his face smudged. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," she said, surprised. Julian startled, almost dropping the box of flour. He cleared his throat, trying to hide his awkwardness. "Good morning, Olivia. Breakfast. I'll handle it today." Olivia blinked. She was about to offer help, but then she saw a strange determination in his eyes. She just nodded slightly. "Understood, Mr. Sterling." She stepped back, quietly brewed a cup of tea, and leaned against the counter, observing. Julian's struggle began. Flour flew everywhere. The first pancake stuck to the pan and burned. The second was too thick. He sighed, wearing the expression of a CEO facing a failed deal. But he didn't give up. Just then, Caleb entered the kitchen on his crutches, rubbing his sleepy eyes. He paused when he saw his father by the stove with a lopsided apron. "Dad?" His voice was full of surprise. Julian turned, holding the third pancake. It wasn't round, oddly shaped like a cloud, but at least it wasn't burned. He placed the plate on the table, his voice a little embarrassed. "I made pancakes. For you?" Caleb looked at the pancake, then up at his father. He said nothing, just slowly sat down in his chair. Julian cut a small piece and offered it to his son. Caleb took a bite. A small, hesitant smile formed on his lips. "It's good." Just those two words. But they were like the profit of his most successful quarter to Julian. After the awkward breakfast, Julian took a deep breath. "Caleb, would you like to go out to the garden for a bit? We'll practice walking." It was an invitation, not a command. Caleb looked at his father in surprise, then nodded. In the sun-drenched garden, Julian performed the role of a father for the first time. He was clumsy, awkward. He didn't know where to start. He held his son too tightly, making it hard for him to move. He gave dry instructions, like in a board meeting. "Lift your right leg." "No, the other one." "Keep your balance, Caleb." Caleb struggled, his legs trembling. He almost fell several times, and frustration began to cloud his young face. The confidence Olivia had built seemed to be fading. Standing by the kitchen window, Olivia looked out, her hands clasped tightly. Her heart ached. She saw Julian's efforts, but also his helplessness. Julian also realized he was failing. He looked at his son, pressing his lips together to hold back tears, and Olivia's image of kneeling to encourage Caleb. Falling is just the ground's way of reminding us that we're trying flashed through his mind. He loosened his grip, knelt on one knee, just as Olivia had done. For the first time, he looked directly into his son's eyes, at eye level. "Come on, son," his voice softened. "Let's try again. You're a warrior, right?" Caleb was stunned to hear the word warrior come from his father's mouth. He blinked, then nodded decisively. This time, Julian didn't give orders. He just placed a hand behind his son's back, an invisible support, and stepped back, walked towards me. Caleb took a breath, gripped his crutches, and took a step. Then another step. Two faltering, unsteady steps. but they were steps towards his father. From the kitchen, Olivia raised her hand to cover her mouth, tears of joy silently streaming down her face. That cold man, that distant billionaire, had finally broken through the ice around his heart. He wasn't just practicing walking with his son. He was learning how to be a father. The therapy sessions were no longer just a task between the boy and Olivia. It had become dad and son time. Julian still hadn't acquired Olivia's finesse or colorful encouragements. But he had something else: absolute focus. The man who once dedicated that focus to stock market charts now poured all his attention into each of his son's steps. "Great job, Caleb. Just one more step," he cheered, forgetting all about maintaining his cool demeanor. His joy was evident. With his father by his side, everything seemed easier. Falling was no longer scary, because before he hit the ground, his father's strong arms would catch him. Fatigue also vanished quicker, because after every effort, he would receive a pat on the head from his father, a gesture a little awkward but full of pride. That joy itself became the best medicine. Caleb's progress was astonishingly fast. He began to dare to take longer strides, balancing better. He wasn't just learning to walk, he was running towards his father, both literally and figuratively. He laughed more, talked more, and for the first time, he actively told his father about the adventures he and Miss Olivia had experienced. One afternoon after a session, Julian was carrying a tired Caleb back into the house. The boy leaned his head against his shoulder, whispering, "Dad, I love you." Julian's whole world seemed to stop. Those three simple words he had longed to hear for so long. He realized he had poured millions of dollars into therapies, the best medical equipment, top specialists. He thought he could use money to fix his son's problem, to buy him a better future. But he was wrong. This moment, with the warm weight of his son on his back and three loving words echoing in his ear, he understood a bitter yet liberating truth. He couldn't pay for love. He couldn't hire someone else to love his son for him. He had to give it himself. Time, patience, a pat on the head, and awkward encouragement. Those were the priceless things no check could buy. Julian's change wasn't limited to just spending time with Caleb. He realized he was only just beginning, and to move forward, he needed a guide. He needed Olivia. That evening, after Caleb had fallen asleep, Julian found Olivia tidying up the kitchen. She still maintained a respectful distance, but the initial awkwardness had been replaced by a quiet warmth. "Olivia," he began, his voice a little hesitant, "may I ask you something?" Olivia turned, surprised. "Yes, Mr. Sterling?" Julian dismissed the formal title. "Please call me Julian. It's about Caleb." He took a breath, lowering the defensive wall he had built up for so long. "The exercises you do with him, why are they so effective?" The physical therapist gave a very detailed protocol, but I've never seen him as motivated as he is with you. Olivia wiped her hands on her apron, thinking for a moment before answering. "I think," she said gently, "because with the doctor, it's therapy, but for Caleb and me, it's warrior missions. Children don't have a concept of rehabilitation, but they understand adventures very well. My younger brother, he was similar. He had weak legs after an accident. I learned that when you turn hardship into a game, the burden is halved." For the first time, Julian heard a little about her past. "Your brother?" "He's much better now," Olivia smiled, a smile that held both joy and a hint of distant sadness. "He taught me that patience is more important than strength." That first conversation broke the ice between them. In the evenings that followed, Julian actively sought her out. He no longer gave orders or demanded reports, he asked. He was no longer the paying employer, and she was no longer the obedient assistant. They became teammates. When Caleb struggled with a new movement, Julian would look to Olivia, a look seeking help, and she would respond with an encouraging nod or a subtle suggestion. They shared small victories together when Caleb stood independently for 5 more seconds. They also shared unspoken anxieties when Caleb seemed disheartened after a less than ideal day of practice. They were two people from completely different worlds, yet connected by a common goal, a shared love for a little boy. They both carried a pain. Julian, the pain of losing his wife. Olivia, the pain she had experienced with her brother. And most importantly, they shared a common hope to see Caleb confidently walk on his own 2 feet. Weeks later, on a sunny Sunday afternoon, the backyard had become their sanctuary, witnessing every effort and breakthrough. Today was a special day. The physical therapist said Caleb's muscle strength was sufficient for him to try walking without crutches. Julian and Olivia stood facing each other, about 10 steps apart. Caleb stood in the middle, his hands still gripping his crutches, his eyes a little worried but full of determination. "Are you ready, warrior?" Julian asked, trying to maintain a calm demeanor. Caleb looked at Olivia. She smiled, a confident smile. "You can do it. Dad and I are both here." Caleb took a deep breath. He slowly, carefully released his grip from one crutch, then the other. The wooden crutches fell onto the soft grass with a gentle clack. For a moment, he swayed. Both Julian and Olivia held their breath, hearts pounding, but neither moved. They had learned to let the boy find his own balance. Caleb staggered, but then he found his footing. He stood there, on his own 2 feet, without any support. His eyes were wide with both surprise and joy. He looked down at his feet, then up at his father and Olivia. "Look," Julian held out his hand. "Walk towards me, Caleb. You can do it." Caleb pressed his lips together, concentrating intensely. He lifted one foot, a slow and arduous movement, then placed it forward. His body swayed again, but he managed to regain his balance. Then he lifted the other foot. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. The steps were imperfect, shaky, and faltering, but they were free steps. Julian knelt down, opening his arms wide. Olivia stood behind, raising her hand to cover her mouth, tears of joy silently streaming down her face. Caleb quickened his pace, almost running. He rushed into his father's embrace, his joyous laughter echoing throughout the garden. Julian hugged his son tightly, his heart overflowing with pride and love. He looked at Olivia over Caleb's shoulder, and in their eyes there was more than just shared joy. After Caleb's miraculous steps, a subtle yet undeniable shift occurred in the mansion. The relationship between Julian and Olivia was no longer just a partnership for Caleb's sake. Their evening conversation stretched longer, no longer solely revolving around the boy. They talked about dreams, about the past, about deep-seated fears and unspoken hopes. Julian saw in Olivia not just gentleness, but also an extraordinary inner strength. Olivia saw in Julian not the cold billionaire, but a man with a warm heart who had bravely broken through his own shell to learn how to love. They realized they had found the missing piece in each other. One evening, several months later, after Caleb had fallen asleep, Julian led Olivia out to the garden. Under the gentle moonlight, the garden, the place that had witnessed awkward beginnings and moments of overflowing happiness, became truly magical. "Olivia," Julian began, his hand finding hers, a natural and warm gesture. "Do you remember the first day I brought Caleb out here? How clumsy and awkward I was." Olivia smiled. "I remember, but I also remember you kneeling down, looking him straight in the eye, and calling him warrior." "That was thanks to you," Julian said, his voice sincere. "You taught me everything. You didn't just teach Caleb how to walk. You taught me how to live, how to feel again. I once thought I had it all, but I was living in an empty world. You and Caleb, you both filled it. He knelt on one knee on the soft grass, right where Caleb's crutches had once fallen. He took out a small velvet box. Olivia Harding, he looked directly into her tear-filled eyes. You have healed my heart and my son's heart. Now will you agree to build a new family together? Will you marry me? Olivia couldn't speak. She just nodded through her tears, and when Julian placed the ring on her finger, it was not a transaction, but a promise. Their wedding took place a few months later, not in a grand church or luxurious hotel, but right there in the garden. The guests were only their closest loved ones. There was no media fanfare, just the warmth of family love. Olivia, in an immaculate white wedding gown, looked radiant. Julian, in an elegant suit, his eyes never left her. A happy smile never left his lips. And their ring-bearer was none other than Caleb. The boy, no longer needing crutches, wore a cute little suit, walking with steady steps on the grass. Though his gait still had a unique quality, each step was filled with confidence and joy. He solemnly handed the ring box to his father, then hugged both his father and Olivia tightly. The story concluded with Julian and Olivia exchanging a kiss amidst the applause of everyone. Caleb stood between them, holding both their hands tightly, looking up and smiling brightly. Their new family, built from pain, nurtured by perseverance, and blooming with love, was ready for a new chapter, a future filled with light and hope.